The arena thundered with noise as the champions of a dozen alien worlds took their places. Clad in ceremonial armor etched with glowing sigils, they raised their weapons high, shouting oaths of honor and blood in languages that rattled the very air. The crowd, tens of thousands of voices layered into a living storm, answered with cheers that shook the metal walls of the Colosseum. This was how wars were fought in the galaxy. Loudly, theatrically, with death as entertainment. Combat was ritual, and victory was spectacle. When the human transport finally descended, silence spread like a ripple of unease through the stands. The craft touched down without ceremony, its matte black hull unadorned, devoid of banners or crests. Its hatch opened with a hiss, and 4 figures stepped out. They were faceless behind black helmets, movements controlled, efficient, unnervingly calm. No raised fists, no boasts, no declarations. Their silence pressed against the crowd more heavily than any battle cry. The aliens waited for a statement, some speech to prove humanity's courage. But none came. Instead, one of the men crouched low, pulled back the bolt on his rifle with a sharp metallic snap, and scanned the tree line that marked the edge of the combat zone. Another adjusted the magazine on his sidearm, a practice motion done with absolute focus. A third checked the straps on his gear, testing each buckle with precise pressure. The fourth only gave a silent nod to his leader. It was not the roar of warriors. It was the preparation of predators. And in that quiet, the galaxy learned its first lesson about humanity. When others sought glory, humans sought victory. The 4 moved as one, a formation born not of ritual, but of countless hours of training in lands far from here. Jungles, deserts, mountains, oceans. They had fought where silence was survival and where noise meant death. Each step was deliberate, each glance purposeful. They were not individuals competing for honor. They were a single, cohesive weapon, sharpened into 4 edges of the same blade. Reaper, the one who led, projected command without raising his voice. His gestures were minimal, his stance balanced and forward-leaning. His men watched him closely, not because he demanded obedience, but because he embodied trust earned through fire and blood. When Reaper moved, they moved. When he stopped, they froze. His discipline was not imposed, it was shared. Ghost drifted at the edges of the formation, a phantom presence whose movements seemed too fluid, too quiet, to belong to a creature of flesh and blood. He scanned the shadows as though expecting them to breathe. His weapon hung ready, but his eyes searched for the unseen, the angle of attack others would overlook. The crowd found his stillness unnerving, for it felt like a predator studying prey. Titan, towering and broad-shouldered, carried weight that would have staggered others but seemed natural on his frame. His steps were steady, each one pressing into the ground like a declaration of endurance. Where others flexed strength to impress the masses, Titan carried his strength like armor, silent but undeniable. Even in stillness, he radiated the certainty of one who could shoulder both burden and battlefield. Viper was the last, lean and coiled like his namesake. His gaze darted constantly, measuring distances, angles, trajectories. His hands lingered on his rifle as if it were an extension of his body, his calculations invisible but ever present. Where Titan embodied force, Viper embodied precision, a man who saw patterns where others saw chaos. The crowd watched these humans, expecting eventually some performance to match the occasion. Instead, the silence stretched until it became suffocating. The champions of other species shifted uneasily, their bright armor and ceremonial banners suddenly gaudy beside the matte black efficiency of Earth soldiers. At last, the announcer's voice echoed through the Colosseum, booming in multiple tongues. The trial by combat begins. Let the champions of the galaxy prove their worth. A roar erupted as alien warriors raised their weapons once more. Some shouted oaths to ancestors. Others declared the blood debt they would collect. The humans did not answer. Instead, they turned their visors toward the battlefield ahead. the dense jungle that stretched into shadows. Reaper made a single hand gesture, and without a word, the seals advanced. Their first steps into the undergrowth were not for show, but for survival. The ground shifted beneath their boots, roots coiling like traps, branches low and heavy with moisture. Visibility shrank to mere yards, shadows pressing close. For the alien warriors, this jungle was a stage. For the seals, it was terrain to be dissected, understood, and turned into advantage. The first alien challenge came swiftly. A warrior with tusks curling upward and armor painted in streaks of crimson burst from the trees, roaring as though his voice alone could drive men to their knees. His blade crackled with energy, humming through the air as he swung. Reaper didn't flinch. His rifle snapped up, a single controlled burst punching through the gaps in the alien's chest plate. The warrior staggered, disbelief in his eyes, before collapsing into the undergrowth. The entire encounter lasted less than 5 seconds. Gasps echoed from the stands. The crowd had expected a clash of titans, blades ringing, sweat flying. Instead, the humans had ended it before the drama could begin. To them, there was no theater in death, only necessity. The alien champions hesitated. The silence that followed was not merely absence of sound. It was heavy, oppressive, suffused with the realization that the rules of this trial had shifted. Humanity was not playing their game. Humanity was playing its own. Ghost glanced at the body once, then vanished back into the tree-line, flanking without command. Titan's weapon swept the jungle ahead, ready to anchor the line. Viper adjusted his rifle, sighting along the shadows, finger poised but patient. Reaper lifted his hand in another gesture, and they pressed deeper into the green. Above, the galaxy watched. Confusion mingled with awe. These men had not come to entertain. They had come to survive, and in surviving, they would redefine what it meant to be warriors among the stars. The jungle swallowed them whole, and the crowd strained to follow. What they saw was not theater, but execution. Movements measured, weapons precise, silence heavier than any battle cry. The aliens had expected speeches, boasts, and honor oaths. Instead, the humans had simply checked their rifles, nodded, and stepped into the dark. And for the first time in the long history of the trials, the galaxy wondered not whether humanity would endure, but what would happen if they did. The shuttle drifted through the void with a hum so steady it felt like silence. Inside, 4 men sat harnessed to their seats, their visors raised now that secrecy was no longer required. The galaxy knew of their arrival. The mystery had already begun to unsettle their opponents. Yet the men themselves remained unshaken. For them, nerves had long ago been replaced by discipline. Reaper, seated closest to the cockpit, studied a data slate glowing faint blue. His eyes scanned terrain simulations of the coming battlefield. Dense foliage, uneven ridges, scattered ruins left by some long-forgotten species. Every detail mattered. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, orders became law. His teammates trusted him not because of rank, but because his judgment had carried them through fire more than once. Reaper's calm was not the calm of indifference. It was the calm of a man who had learned long ago that panic cost lives. Ghost leaned back in his harness, wiry frame deceptively relaxed, fingers drumming a rhythm against his thigh. He was the scout, the one whose instincts found patterns in chaos. His pale eyes flicked toward the viewport often, noting the angle of distant stars, as if cataloging escape routes no one else would consider. Ghost was a survivor above all else, his mind always racing a few steps ahead, drawing lines where others saw only noise. The others called him quiet, but silence to Ghost was a weapon. He heard what others missed. Titan dwarfed the cramped cabin, his shoulders pressing against the reinforced padding of his seat. Where Ghost was all-in agility, Titan was unyielding force. His hands, scarred and thick, rested on his knees with deceptive stillness. He carried the heavy weapons, the breaching tools, the kind of equipment that broke walls and shattered defenses. Titan had never been subtle, and he never tried to be. His presence alone was often enough to shift momentum in battle. the unmovable wall against which enemies broke themselves. He believed in strength, but he believed even more in protecting the men at his side. Viper sat last, posture straight, eyes focused on the disassembled rifle laid carefully across his lap. He worked with meticulous precision, checking the chamber, cleaning the barrel, adjusting the scope until every detail aligned perfectly. Unlike Titan's brute force, Viper's talent was surgical. He struck from distance, his shots calculated with mathematical certainty. He rarely wasted words, as if each syllable was another bullet to be rationed. Yet when he did speak, the others listened. His voice carried the weight of a man who saw what others overlooked, who always chose his moment with deadly care. Together they formed an equation no alien had yet encountered. Stealth, precision, strength, and leadership fused into one. They did not wear ceremonial armor. Their gear was matte, practical, engineered not to impress but to function. Nothing about them gleamed. Nothing about them begged for attention. And that was the point. The conflict before them was deceptively simple. The galactic armies had demanded a trial by combat, and the humans had accepted. But beneath the simplicity lay a truth sharp as a blade. This was not merely a contest of strength. This was humanity's identity on trial, their right to be taken seriously as a species in a galaxy where war defined respect. If they failed, Earth would forever be branded cowardly, unworthy of alliance, an outcast world ripe for exploitation. If they won, the galaxy would have no choice but to acknowledge what humanity had always known. Survival was the greatest honor of all. The shuttle shuddered as docking clamps locked into place against the orbital station that housed the arena. A hollow clang reverberated through the hull, followed by a hiss as pressure equalized. Reaper closed the data slate and set it aside. He met the eyes of each man in turn, a silent confirmation passing between them. They needed no speeches. Their mission was etched into their bones. The hatch opened with a hydraulic groan, and the four men stepped into the docking bay. Rows of alien spectators lined the observation platforms, their gazes heavy with disdain. Some jeered openly, shouting in languages thick with contempt. Others simply stared, waiting for the humans to falter, to hesitate, to prove the accusation true. The SEALs ignored them. Ghost's eyes swept the architecture, noting possible sniper points, doorways, cover. Titan's stride was steady, his steps echoing like measured drumbeats. Viper carried his rifle case as if it weighed nothing, his grip so firm it seemed part of him. Reaper walked ahead of them all, gaze forward, posture relaxed yet unyielding. Together, they were a wall of silence cutting through the noise. An official from the galactic armies, a towering insectoid with a voice like grinding stone, announced the terms. The battlefield would be a vast simulation chamber designed to replicate the harshest conditions. Dense jungle, extreme humidity, and environmental hazards that tested endurance as much as skill. Each species' chosen champions would be deployed simultaneously. The contest would not end until one side was incapacitated or killed. There would be no surrender. The words carried a theatrical weight, as if meant to stir the crowd. The humans did not react. They had heard it all before, in different forms, in different places. This was not ceremony to them. It was simply another mission. When their briefing concluded, the four were escorted to their staging chamber. Weapons and gear were laid out on racks. The men checked their loadouts with mechanical precision. Rifles loaded, sidearms holstered, blades secured, packs balanced. Reaper gave subtle nods of approval as each man confirmed readiness. Their movements were efficient, practiced, devoid of wasted energy. Standard insertion, Reaper said at last. His voice was calm, low, and final. Stay sharp. Adapt as needed. Ghost smirked faintly. Just another jungle. Jungle full of aliens, Titan muttered, tightening the straps on his armor. Viper slid the last component of his rifle into place with a soft click. Doesn't matter what's in it, he said quietly. Targets are targets. Reaper's eyes flicked over them once more. Good. We keep each other alive. That's the mission. Silence followed. It was not the silence of hesitation, but of unity. They needed no further words. A low hum filled the chamber as the simulation platform activated. The walls around them shimmered with shifting light, pixels cascading like falling water. The sterile metal dissolved into dense foliage, the scent of damp earth filling the air. Heat pressed down, sticky and oppressive. The ground beneath their boots became uneven, soft with moss and roots. Above, a canopy of alien trees stretched high, blotting out the false sun. The crowd's roar surged through hidden speakers, their excitement palpable. Alien champions would be entering soon, their arrival staged for maximum spectacle. The humans stood still, waiting for the signal. When it came, it was not with fanfare, but with the sharp crack of a starting chime. Somewhere in the distance, the first alien war cry split the air. The SEALs did not flinch. Reaper raised his rifle, his tone level. Move! They disappeared into the jungle, shadows swallowed by green. The trial had begun. The jungle closed around them like a living wall, every tree trunk slick with moisture, every shadow deep enough to hide death. Heat clung to the air, thick with the hum of unseen insects, and the canopy filtered the light into broken shards that made the ground shimmer in constant motion. To the alien spectators watching from afar, the battlefield was a grand spectacle, an arena designed to test courage in the most brutal conditions. To the 4 Navy SEALs moving through the foliage, it was just terrain, obstacles to be mapped, cover to be exploited, angles to be calculated. Reaper led the column, his eyes scanning the shifting green with steady precision. His rifle never wavered, the barrel sweeping from shadow to shadow as he advanced. Behind him, Ghost moved with uncanny silence, senses stretched outward, his head tilting to track distant sounds. The scrape of claws on bark, the faint ripple of leaves where no wind blew. Titan carried the rear, every step deliberate, his massive frame somehow finding rhythm in the undergrowth. In the middle, Viper held his rifle low but ready, eyes tracing sight lines through branches and vines, already calculating potential kill zones. The first contact came without warning. A guttural roar echoed through the trees, followed by the crash of something heavy forcing its way through the brush. From the shadows, 3 alien warriors burst forward, their bodies armored in carapace plates that glistened like obsidian. Each carried a jagged blade longer than a man's arm, their mouths lined with serrated fangs. They came not in stealth, but in spectacle, announcing their arrival with noise meant to terrify. Reaper raised his fist. The squad froze. In the heartbeat that followed, the aliens rushed, blades raised high. Left, Reaper ordered, voice calm. Ghost peeled off instantly, disappearing into the undergrowth. Titan dropped to one knee, weapon spitting control bursts. Armor cracked beneath the impact, one alien tumbling with a shriek. Another surged forward, unbothered, only to be met by Viper's single, clean shot through the exposed joint of its neck. The last swung wildly, blade carving through a tree trunk in its fury. Before it could recover, Ghost reappeared, a knife flashing in his hand. The strike was silent, precise, and the alien collapsed without a sound. The entire skirmish lasted less than 30 seconds. To the alien audience, it was a shock. They had expected a drawn-out clash of strength and honor. Instead, they saw something alien in itself. Efficiency, coordination, no wasted motion, no grand declarations. The SEALs did not celebrate. Reaper simply checked their formation. Move! They advanced deeper, each man alert. For every alien defeated, more remained. The Galactic armies had not sent weaklings to the arena. These are chosen champions, warriors bred for combat. Yet again and again, they relied on theatrics, announcing themselves, roaring to frighten, charging in straight lines. Against species who valued spectacle, such tactics might intimidate. Against men trained to dismantle chaos with precision, they were predictable. Hours passed in the false jungle, each moment thick with tension. Ghost warnings came often, the faint glimmer of movement in the treetops, the scrape of armored feet in the mud, the smell of ozone where alien weapons discharged prematurely. Each time, the team adjusted, repositioned, struck first. Viper dropped enemies from distance with shots so precise the crowd gasped. Titan anchored ambushes, forcing enemies into kill zones. Ghost traps turned terrain itself into a weapon. Reaper bound it all together, his voice a constant metronome of orders, each word timed and weighted to perfection. But the jungle struck back. From a canopy descended a beast unlike the others, a towering brute covered in overlapping plates, its maw lined with rows of needle teeth. Its roar shook the leaves from branches, and even Titan staggered under its charge. The creature swung a spiked arm, catching Titan across the chest and throwing him into a tree. Armor plates dented, breath driven from his lungs. Titan staggered, but did not fall. Target center mass. Reaper barked. Viper fired, round sparking off armor. Ghost circled, searching for weakness. Titan pushed forward again, shielding the others despite his injuries. The beast swung wide, a strike meant to decapitate, but Reaper slipped inside the arc, firing point-blank into its exposed gills. The monster howled, staggering just enough for Ghost to climb its back and drive his blade between armored plates at the base of the skull. It collapsed in a thunder of broken branches. Titan coughed blood, but waved off help. Still moving, Reaper's eyes flicked over him, noting the bruising, the dented armor, the slowed breath. He said nothing, but his decision was clear. Titan would not be left behind. The mission was survival, but survival meant all four or nothing. The crowd, watching, murmured at this. To them, abandoning the wounded was honorable sacrifice. But the humans carried their comrade without hesitation, moving as one unit through the undergrowth. The alien champions pressed harder now, perhaps angered by their losses. Packs of them surged from the shadows, weapons blazing, voices raised in ritual chants. The jungle erupted in light and noise, but the seals bent the chaos to their will. Reaper's orders cut through the din. Ghost vanished and reappeared with blades dripping. Viper's rifle cracked rhythmically, each shot ending a life. Titan's heavy fire pinned enemies long enough for the others to flank. Hours bled into more violence. The air thickened with smoke and the iron scent of blood. The ground became a graveyard of broken weapons and shattered bodies. Yet still the seals pressed forward. Their silence unnerved the galaxy. Their refusal to play to the crowd, transforming the battle into something grim and unstoppable. At last, the undergrowth opened into a wide clearing. There, waiting, stood the alien warlord. His armor gleamed with crimson etchings, each symbol a record of victories, each scar across his body a mark of survival. He towered above them, weapon a great blade that pulsed with energy, his voice booming across the clearing as he roared his challenge. To him, this was the climax, the duel of champions the galaxy craved. The seals did not answer. Reaper raised his hand. They spread out, circling. The warlord charged, blade carving the air with devastating force. Titan intercepted, blocking with his weapon, muscles straining. Sparks flew as the alien pressed his advantage. Ghost darted behind, striking at joints, drawing sparks but not breaking through. Viper fired, shots ricocheting off reinforced plates. The warlord laughed, reveling in the struggle. Then Reaper gave the word. Titan disengaged, just as Ghost drove the warlord off balance. Viper fired, this time aiming not at the armor, but at the ground, kicking up dust, blinding the enemy for a fraction of a second. It was enough. Reaper stepped in, blade flashing, driving steel into the exposed seam beneath the alien's arm. The warlord roared, stumbled, tried to rally. Ghost struck again, Titan slammed forward. Viper's final shot pierced the creature's throat. The great warrior collapsed with a thunderous crash, silence spreading through the clearing. The crowd beyond the simulation chamber went silent as well. The duel had ended, but not as they had imagined. No grand speech, no drawn-out spectacle, just ruthless coordination. The galaxy had seen what humans truly were, predators who fought as one. Reaper scanned the battlefield, then lowered his rifle. His voice was steady, final. Area secure. The SEALs regrouped, Titan limping but unbroken, Ghost wiping his blade clean, Viper already scanning for the next threat. They had survived the trial's fiercest challenge, but none of them relaxed. Somewhere beyond the jungle, more enemies waited. The trial was not yet over. Smoke hung heavy in the air as the warlord's body stilled. Its massive frame sprawled across the jungle floor. The false sunlight filtering through the canopy seemed dimmer, as though the simulation itself recoiled from what had just transpired. For the first time since the trial began, the alien audience beyond the walls of the arena sat in silence. The spectacle they had demanded had been delivered, but not in the form they expected. There had been no pageantry, no prolonged duel of honor. Instead, men had dismantled every challenger with ruthless precision. Humanity had spoken through action alone. Reaper stood over the fallen warlord, his rifle lowered but not forgotten. His gaze swept the clearing, cataloging every possible angle of approach. He did not allow himself to relax, because battles ended only when the enemy was gone, and even then vigilance was survival. Ghost moved like a shadow at his side, already searching the undergrowth for hidden threats, blades at the ready. Titan leaned heavily against a tree, his chest rising and falling in ragged breaths, armor dented, bruises spreading beneath the surface. Viper remained calm and meticulous, crouched low as he reassembled his rifle, eyes flicking upward with each click of a component sliding into place. The silence stretched until it became heavy, oppressive. Then the simulation flickered. The trees shuddered as if struck by a storm, the ground beneath their boots dissolving into glowing pixels. The false jungle collapsed in on itself, replaced by the sterile walls of the arena chamber. The roar of the crowd surged back with a force that rattled the air. Thousands of alien voices rose, some in awe, some in fury, others in confusion. The trial was over. The humans had survived. An insectoid official stepped forward, its multifaceted eyes fixed on the four men. It raised a staff of authority, its voice booming across the chamber. The trial by combat has concluded. Humanity's champions stand victorious. For a heartbeat, the arena was still. Then chaos erupted. Some alien delegations shouted protests, demanding disqualification, declaring that the humans had shown no honor. Others roared in admiration, acknowledging strength, even if it came in forms they did not understand. The noise swelled into a storm of divided voices. Reaper and his team said nothing. They stood in formation, weapons at their sides, silent beneath their visors. Their lack of reaction unsettled the crowd more than any words could have. High above, in the council's observation chamber, elder representatives conferred. Their voices carried authority that could not be ignored. The Dravkon warriors spat venomous words, insisting that humanity had defiled the sacred tradition with cowardly ambushes and dishonorable tactics. But others, long silent, now spoke in defense of the humans. One elder, her crystalline form glimmering in the light, rose and addressed the chamber. "You call them cowards because they did not fight as you fight," she said, her tone sharp as glass. "But is it cowardice to survive? Is it cowardice to protect one's kin, to fight as one mind, one will? We mistake silence for weakness, yet silence hides strength. These humans do not boast because they do not need to." The chamber stilled. Her words cut deep. Even those who despised the outcome could not ignore the truth within them. The trial had demanded survival. The humans had not only survived, they had dominated. On the arena floor, Titan adjusted his stance, still wincing from his injuries. Ghost shifted closer, quietly supporting him without making a show of it. Viper glanced upward, his expression unreadable, while Reaper remained motionless, his focus unwavering. They were warriors, but not performers. Their loyalty to one another was the foundation of their strength, and in that moment, the galaxy saw it clearly. The insectoid official raised its staff once more. The result is undeniable. Humanity is granted recognition as a worthy people. The council will no longer name them cowards. The crowd erupted again, some in cheers, others in fury. But the proclamation was final. The trial had served its purpose. Humanity had carved its place among the stars not through speeches or rituals, but through blood and unity. Reaper finally turned to his team. "Mission complete," he said simply. Titan grinned through the pain. "Never doubted it." Ghost gave a rare chuckle. "They sure did." Viper's voice was quiet, measured. "Not anymore." The four men moved as one toward the waiting shuttle. The noise of the arena swirled around them. Praise, condemnation, disbelief, but none of it mattered. Their task had never been to win the galaxy's approval. It had been to prove, once and for all, that humanity would not bow to ridicule. As they boarded the shuttle, Titan paused, glancing back at the chamber. "Think they'll ever understand us?" he asked. Reaper followed his gaze, but did not linger. "They don't need to. They just need to remember." The ramp closed, sealing them inside. Engines rumbled to life, lifting the craft from the platform. Through the viewport, the stars stretched vast and unyielding. The mission had ended, but the war of perception had only just begun. Humanity had taken its first step toward respect, and respect in this galaxy was a weapon as sharp as any blade. The SEALs sat in silence as the shuttle slipped into the void. Titan leaned back, finally allowing exhaustion to wash over him. Ghost cleaned his blade with methodical care, each motion a ritual that calmed the nerves. Viper checked his rifle again, adjusting sights no longer needed. Reaper closed his eyes for a moment, committing the mission to memory. Beyond them, the galaxy stirred. Worlds that had once dismissed humanity now reconsidered. Some plotted to challenge them again, unwilling to let the insult of defeat fade. Others whispered of alliances, seeing in humans a new kind of warrior, one who valued life more than glory, yet fought with a ferocity unmatched. In the end, the galaxy would not forget the day it called humans cowards, nor would it forget the silence that followed, the silence broken only by the precision of four men who had carried their species on their shoulders. Humanity had not sought this trial, but it had endured it, and endurance, above all, was victory. The stars waited, endless and cold, but the four SEALs sat ready. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The galaxy had been warned.